If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. Hello everyone, hope you're all doing great. I made a funny mistake in the title on my last video. Let me know if you saw it before I changed it. I'll have it up on screen now. I've been enjoying doing these longer videos a lot more lately, so I'm going to keep them up. Out of interest, what's the funniest mistake you've made in a title or signing something? My most recent one was that in my title. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video and have a brilliant day. When I was in the 8th grade, my parents separated. Basically, my mum packed her and I up one night and we moved to my granddad's house and didn't look back. We ended up living there through my high school years when he died. My parents officially got divorced. My mum remarried and we moved into the city with my stepfather. My grandpa lived on the first floor of the apartment, and the owners, an elderly couple who were family to us through marriage, lived on the second floor. The property also had a small in-law cottage out in the back where my uncle lived. For some reason that I will never understand, there was no lock to get into the actual building if you entered through the back. The back door opens into a landing where there was a locked and deadbolted door to our apartment, and then 2 sets of stairs. One led up to the also locked and deadbolted door of the second floor apartment, while the other led down the stairs to the basement where there was no lock. Our apartment could also be entered from the front of the building, but in order to access the second floor apartment or the basement, you have to go through this landing. The basement was actually pretty nice, and at one point they had started converting it into its own apartment before ultimately deciding to make this a law cottage instead. So in the basement there was a full kitchen complete with its own oven, sink and refrigerator. The washer and dryer, which was shared by all of us, also in the basement, as well as some general storage items. The basement was entirely open except for a back room that was full of storage. It had one of those kind of swinging saloon style doors that you can see above and underneath them. The storage area was longer than it was deep, so you couldn't really see much behind the doors aisles from the shelves. You had to actually walk in to see them. So one night while I'm in high school, while I'm 16, after taking a shower, I saw that the laundry bin in the bathroom was pretty full, so I grabbed a ton of laundry and head down towards the basement. It's a pretty late night, but I figured I'd at least get it started and move things over in the morning. I toss everything onto the ground and start sorting out the colours when I get hit with this horrible feeling in my gut. The basement was not at all creepy. It's pretty well lit and pretty welcoming, with the kitchen and everything else, but for reasons I can't explain, something felt wrong. Anyone who's ever been hit with that feeling that they're being watched will know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know how or why it come over me, but it was something that I could not shake, and I found myself looking over my shoulders constantly while I was there. I don't know why, maybe to assure myself I was being a big baby, but I began walking towards the back room, but stopped myself just as I reached out towards the swinging doors. I've been a horror fan for as long as I can remember, and had seen more horror movies than I could count, and I knew that if that was a horror movie, I'd be calling myself an idiot and saying do not go to the back room. I quickly snapped my hand back and ran up the stairs, leaving all the clothes behind, and into our apartment, where I locked the doors and immediately told my mum that I just had the worst feeling in the basement and I was super creeped out. Despite me not being the type of person that scares easily, she basically rolled her eyes at me and told me to go to bed. I ended up doing this, and it took a while to shake the feeling until I finally fall asleep. Later that night, my bladder woke me up, and I stumbled out of my room to the bathroom. I didn't turn any of the lights on as I started making my way towards the bathroom because it usually woke up my granddad and I didn't want to bother him. When I got closer to the bathroom, I noticed my mum standing in the doorway of her bedroom, and something looks off. It took me a moment to realise she was clutching the phone. She then noticed me and whispered to me to get against the wall, of which I did with no hesitation. It took a few moments for the grogginess to wear off and my eyes adjust to the dark, but I could see what she did. My mum's bedroom was immediately off the kitchen. The kitchen was where the back door that led to the basement was located. The door had a tiny window up, with a small but thick curtain. It was thin enough that you could see that someone was outside the door, but thick enough to not be able to make out any of the features of the person on the opposite side. But there was someone on the other side of the door. Every now and then the doorknob would move and you could hear the scratching sound that was on the other side. I have honestly never been so afraid in my life. I'm not sure how I managed to do what I did next. It was like someone else had taken control of me, and I slid down against the wall I was clinging to, and started to crawl against it in the darkness towards the kitchen. My mum looked petrified, watching back and forth between me and the door. She kept whispering to stop and go back, but I kept going forward. Lowering against the wall towards the counter where I slowly grabbed a butchering knife. I was shaking the whole time I moved with the knife in my hand on the ground next to the fridge, which is next to the door the man's trying to get into. I had this horrible feeling that I was going to be killed, but if I was, I'd at least go out with a fight. It felt like I sat there forever in the darkness next to the door, with my mum hiding in the bedroom doorway across from me, just waiting. But it was only for a few minutes. My mum had already called 911 before I woken up and stumbled my way towards the bathroom. The lights from the approaching squad cars soon filled the kitchen, and from the other side of the door, I can hear a sudden clamouring and commotion, and the slam of the back screen bursting open, as well as the assailant running off. It was around 3 AM when this happened, so it was completely dark outside, and we lived by some train tracks with very thick forestry around us, making it easy for the man to escape. The police pursued him though. The policeman come in and took my statements and my mum's. My grandpa's also. He managed to sleep through the entire thing until the police came through to search the apartment. Sounds like a me thing to do. The outside of the door and the doorknob were completely covered in deep scratches, like someone had been going at it with a knife trying to figure out how to get in. But that's not the most horrifying part. That is reserved for the basement. The clothes I'd brought down were not where I'd left them. They had been thrown about in the back room, the one with the swinging door that I had stopped myself from going in. The boxes were out of view, and they've all been opened and gone through, with missing food wrappers on the floor. He had been down there looking for something to steal. He was down there when I went down to do the laundry, and I almost walked in that room, and would not have seen him had he had a knife or other weapon. To this day, I can't help but find thinking to myself, what would have happened had I walked into that room alone? I woke up at about 3:30 AM, unable to go back to sleep. I think screw it. I have to start getting ready for school in 2.5 hours anyway, might as well get up. Soon I realise there is nothing to do that early in the morning, so I decide I'm gonna walk up to the 7-Eleven, grab a Pepsi and walk around for a bit. I leave for the 7-Eleven at about 4 and walk around for 20 minutes. I look at the time on my phone and think, alright, time to go back. I'm gonna take the long way. The long way, which basically leads straight to where I live. I turn the corner to start my journey down the long street, and the first thing I see is someone sitting on a bench at one of those little party huts at parks. You know, I have a bathroom, grills and benches. If you've ever walked around at night, you know that feeling you get when you see someone. I'm hoping to just walk past them with no problems, but of course, that didn't happen. I walk a little bit closer towards the party hut, then I hear the person sitting there say, "Hey." I turn to give her a head nod. From what I could see, she looks kind of weird. Then she says, "Why don't you come over here?" Then things go bad. So of course, me being a straight female, my first thought is, oh, she wants me to hang out with her. Then the skeptical part of my brain is like, wait a minute, this isn't right, keep walking. I listen to the skeptical part of my brain and continue walking, and she keeps screaming for me, all of a sudden stopping. I see two people walk out from behind the hut and start walking towards me, and one of them screams, "Are you deaf?" I guess my fight or flight response kicks in. Thoughts are racing through my head and I'm debating on whatever I should do now. Should I run? No, what if they're faster? I can't fight them. I've never fought before and there's two of them. It then randomly pops in my head that the next best thing to do is try and scare them. And I remembered something Bray Wyatt said the night before on WWE Monday Night Raw. I turned to look straight at them and screamed in a really deep voice, "Your shattered bones will pave the streets of my kingdom." I then hear, "What the heck?" Yeah, screw that. Them and the girl just take off running across the park. They probably thought I was a psychopath. I bolt it home, laughing on the way. I had too many emotions running back. Shock, relief, fear, and laughter because I managed to scare them off. One summer night, when I was around 5 years old, my sister and I, who was 5 and 8 at the time respectively, woke up. Through our window, we can hear my parents yelling loudly on the back patio. This was not a common occurrence, and when they did fight, it was not typically anywhere that was near to having a chance of us hearing. But this sort of thing did happen from time to time. And through the situation, we kind of shrugged it off, shut the window and went back to sleep. We completely forgot about the ordeal. It wasn't until years later we learned the truth about the yelling. As an adult, I overheard my mum explaining the situation to a family member in another room. I'm a little fuzzy on details as this occurred long ago, but this is the gist of it. Apparently at some point at night after my sister and I went to bed, my parents received an unusual phone call from someone using an electric interpreter, the same type of technology a person who is deaf might use to make calls and communicate over the phone. Understandably, my parents were a little surprised because they didn't know anyone who would use this service to contact us. but either way they accepted the call. I'm not sure how this person on the other line introduced themselves, or if they even did at all, but they knew the full names of everyone in my family, which was immediately very creepy and alarming. The conversation began to escalate as the person on the other end of the phone very specifically explained what our home looks like, and told my parents they're hiding somewhere in our backyard, which was large, dark, and full of all kinds of plants and trees, making it hard to see them in there. There were too many places to look. At this point, the tormentor made it clear they had the intentions of entering our home, dismembering myself and my sister. At this point, understandably, they were beginning to become frantic. There's a chance no one's here and it's a cruel joke, but what if it wasn't? My dad asked if they're really out there, and they said they were. They say, what are my parents doing at that moment? They then managed to describe exactly what they're wearing, and just like that, this infection of a human on the other end of the line explained what my dad was doing specifically. Exactly what he was wearing. Where certain things on our patio were placed and my mum's facial expressions. They were real and about it. My dad, a rough guy but with a heart of gold, charged into the night ready to kill anyone he encountered. But neither of my parents had cell phones. As my dad was venturing out into the dark that night, he found nothing, and when the cops showed up soon after, they found nothing too. The police were not able to trace the call because the electronic interpreter, which they said was a common device used by people trying to anonymously harass people over the phone. I was not told about this until a decade after it happened. When I was 6 years old, my favourite thing to do was explore the woods by my home. I never went into the thicket alone. My friend Ethan liked to join me, but sometimes it would be me and my neighbour Katrina, who was 7 at the time. To get to the woodsy area, you had to cross a large tree fallen over a small ravine, something I would never do now, but at my age I was fearless, I guess. So my friends and I spent many days daring each other to cross the bank, back and forth over the tree without using our arms for balance. Stupid, I know. One particular dreary summer day, I asked Ethan and Katrina to explore with me, but Ethan wasn't feeling too well, so stayed at home. Katrina and I set off down the obscure path that led to the fallen tree, and spent a couple of hours in the woods. I remembered the smell of woods, the damp, slippery feel of the leaves beneath my feet. It had been raining the night before, and the woods were electric with the sounds of birds chirping and water rushing through the ravine. We're so entranced. That's why we didn't hear the man approaching us. My first thought was to get the hell out of there. I knew all about stranger danger and had this weird feeling, but I could tell Katrina was not thinking exactly the same. The man had told us we looked like great explorers and he could use our help. He said his puppy ran off into the woods and she wouldn't be able to take care of herself, so it's important to find her soon. I hesitated, but Katrina always had a weakness for puppies and loved to help. We set out looking for the missing puppy, but I kept getting this weird feeling. Every time we walked towards the direction the man come from, he would tell us he already looked over there, and that we should keep on the other side. By that time, I was done. I was ready to get out of there, but Katrina wouldn't budge. I told her I'm leaving and she said she's gonna stay. I wanted to beg her to come, but I decided to leave her because I couldn't stand being there any longer. I jog out of the woods, careful not to slip on any damp leaves, but the fallen tree was covered in them, so I tiptoed. Halfway across, my body went through a trail of goosebumps, and I ran. I forgot how slippery the log was and didn't even realise I was falling into the ravine until I got into the bottom. I heard a loud crack and looked down and see my femur was broken and sticking through my skin. Things got foggy after, but I guess I screamed enough at the closest neighbour to call 911. I'm just happy I screamed loud enough to save Katrina. The police and EMTs found me lying, crying, gasping my broken leg. The last thing I remembered was pointing towards the woods, telling them to look for Katrina. I wake up the next day with my leg hooked up to the ceiling and a traction in a world of pain. My mum was holding my hand and said that when I was ready the police would like to talk to me. I asked if I was in trouble, which she said not at all, they just needed answers. A policeman come in and asked me if I'd seen the man in the woods before I'd broken my leg. I recounted the events that happened and they asked if I saw Katrina. They had. When I left, the man started asking Katrina about her family and if they had any big scary brothers that had come out looking for her if I was out late. Their conversation was cut short by the screams and Katrina ran immediately towards the sound. Luckily the man's reflexes weren't quick, and even though he tried, he's never able to keep up with her. She said she managed to look around at the end of the woods and saw him running back to them. She thought that maybe he was going to get help. Turns out there was no lost puppy. The police never found the creepy man, but they did find a bag hidden in the bushes. Inside the bag was some duct tape, rope and binoculars. Sometimes I have nightmares about what could have happened that day, and even now I get chills going into the woods. So a long time ago, I had a falling out with a friend who liked to cyber harass people she didn't like. Because I knew this, I took precautions on all my social medias and added two-step verifications where it would send you codes to your cell phone if someone tried to log in or change your details. Seemed like a safe step, right? I never thought about it any further until a few days ago. I received an SMS text from a random number that had addressed me by my full name first, which freaks me out a little, because the spelling of my first name is uncommon where I'm from. No big deal. Maybe it's just an old friend who changed phones. I gave him the classic "who dis" back at them, to which I received an even stranger reply that I was not expecting. Oh my god, it's you. Are you 18? I have something I want to cash app you. Well, that's weird, I think. Probably just some scam to hack me. I said, who the hell is this? And got another text back from that number. No less than 5 minutes later, I get 3 calls and 2 spam voicemails from a different unrecognized phone number. Then I pick up the phone, followed by my full name. That's alarming. I immediately took screenshots and had my boyfriend call the phone, but to no luck. I blocked the number and hope that's it. Maybe 30 minutes later, I get 5 new calls from a number and a new, even more alarming set of text saying, I'm a 40-year-old man and I'm in love with you. I keep trying to reach you until you respond. I won't stop. I immediately block the number and call my parents. Then within 2 minutes he texts me from a new number again saying, wow, I just wanted to talk to you for 5 minutes. I'll even pay you for the task. But after that, consider me gone. Wow. Again blocked. I alert my boss and the text stop. After work, I filed a police report and bought a baseball bat and set up some security alarms in my apartment. My first instinct was that it's a guy I recently worked with who'd been recently fired for harassment. One of my friends, who is a good person with tech stuff, changed his phone number and texted the number pretending to be me on a burner to get some info. It's a bit of a long conversation, so I'll sum it up by saying this guy basically wanted to talk to me on the phone to do weird things behind his screen. He called me 26 times getting no answer, so he stopped trying and we assumed that was the end of it. However, the next morning, I get a text from a new number again. He was claiming to be one of my friend's fathers. I started freaking out. Both my parents and boyfriend are at work, so he sent his mum over to calm me down to stay with me while I'm alone in the apartment. He called my phone and she answered, and all he said in this super creepy raspy voice is please, then abruptly hung up. I was having a full-blown panic attack at this point, so she calls the police department and had an officer come out to update my report. She was still texting the guy while the cop was there, and once she told him law enforcement had been contacted, his whole story changed. He said he doesn't know anything about me. He doesn't even live near me and means no harm. He's just a lonely guy who got a phone number from Facebook deciding to harass me. I might remember this wrong, but I could have sworn I had my phone number set to private, and I know I had two-step verification. It may be from me posting on the Facebook marketplace, but I'm not even sure if it would work that way. I wanted to share this as more or less a warning to anyone who has two-step verification. Please make sure your account is as private as it can possibly be. I hope this doesn't happen to anyone else. This happened a few months ago, and I didn't realize how weird it was until I told my boyfriend a few months later. At my college, our students' IDs are pretty much essential to have. They get you into all of the academic buildings and get you all your food on the meal plan. I lost mine, being forced to find a new one. I went to the security desk and told the security guard I lost my ID and needed a new one. He said no problem, just come with me while I print you a new one. He was older, I have to say about 65, but in very good shape. Definitely over 6 foot, and you could tell he was very attractive when he's younger. He had curly grey hair, very well kept and nice blue eyes. We went to the back security room in the main student commons building. It was a room that was a little ways back, but still had a good amount of foot traffic going by it. I walked in and sat on the couch that was across from the desk. He walked in and closes the door. He went on the computer, asking me for all information, my ID name, my name, birthday, class and year. When he pulled up my account, he saw my picture that is used for my ID. He said if I wanted to take a new one, and I said, no, I'm good, because I don't like my picture being taken. I looked a mess, because I wasn't expecting to need a new picture to be taken. He said, well, your picture's very good. You look pretty, most are bad. I laughed and said thank you, and told him I was a senior in high school and got that taken at orientation almost 3 years ago. He said you must have always been pretty then. I started to feel weird then. Faced a security officer at my college that's known for having great security. He then said the computer wasn't letting him print one without taking a picture since it was so old. He said to me, if you need to get a new ID, it makes you get a new picture after 2 years because people can change in looks, and we need to make sure that we have good confirmation. Okay. You just asked me if I wanted a new one, but now you're telling me I need a new one. I found that weird because I thought it was not the case. It didn't make sense with what he was saying. He then went into a closet with this security room and got out a camera on a tripod and told me to stand against the wall. I did and smiled awkwardly. He told me I needed to take my hair out of the bun because the hair needed to be down for the ID picture. Alright. But I didn't think much of this either, as I've never had a girl's ID without their hair down. He took the picture and said my eyes were closed. I laughed because my eyes are closed in 9 out of 10 pictures. Another reason I don't like my picture taken. He said it's fine, I don't mind taking a couple. He then came over and told me my hair looked awkward, so he was going to fix it up for me to look better. He fixes my hair and pulled my head back and said, "It's good. I really don't care, no one looks at it." He rolled his eyes and said, "Whatever, it's your picture, but you better look good for it." And I said, "It's fine, don't worry, just trying to be polite." And then for the next picture, I saw a clock on the wall and realised I'd only had 10 minutes before the class. I said, "You can just use whatever one. I shouldn't have my eyes closed in all of them, and I've got class in 10 minutes, I've really got to go." He then said, "Your professor isn't going to be mad if you're getting an ID from security and it took a while." At this point, I realised I'd been there for over 20 minutes, and I wasn't nervous but more sick of being there and wanted out. He then told me they take a few minutes to print and just to sit on the couch. He then starts asking me what my major is and if I have a boyfriend, which I said yeah. He said, "How long have we been dating?" And said, "Oh yeah, you know guys in college are no good, they're wasting your time. You should break off and find someone older and more mature." I didn't respond to that and just said, "Okay, well, I'm going to be going because I don't want to be late for class." He then said, "What rush are you in? It's more important you do this." He then went from the desk to the back of the room to grab my ID. He said, "Wow, the picture's even better. I'm a pretty good photographer if I say so myself," and winked. He kept holding the ID, not handing it to me. I was getting annoyed at this point, but I'm really scared inside not showing it. I said, "I'm sorry, but I have to go." He laughed and said, "Okay." I would think a senior wouldn't be nervous about being late, and handed me it. I basically snatched it out of his hands, and he said, "Well, I'll walk you out because you're not supposed to be back here without a security guard. I don't want you in trouble." I'm thinking, oh wow, just let me go. So he walked me out and I said thanks and basically ran out the building. I'm not gonna lie, I thought he was weird and flirty, but I had never needed to get an ID made before, so I thought maybe it was actually the process and he was just a little too flirty while doing it. With 3 weeks left of school, however, I somehow managed to lose my ID. I'd been borrowing my boyfriend's because I was super busy at the end of the year and just thought, I really don't have half an hour to spare, I need to get a new ID. Finally, my boyfriend got annoyed with me using his meal plan and always having his ID and said, "You need to go get a new one, it's 5 minutes tops." I said, "Nah, it took half hour and I don't have time for that." He then says, "What the hell were you doing?" And I said, "What happened?" He said, "No, that is not at all okay, you need to report it." I said I didn't care enough, but I asked him to come with me to get a new one. When I get the new one, it's a completely different security guard and he said, "Yeah, no problem, just wait there, I'll be a minute." Not even 5 minutes later, he was back with a new one made. I told him what happened last time and he looked very concerned. He said who the security guard was. I didn't know his name but described him. He gave me the name and office of the hand security guard and told him he would call and tell them that I was coming over. I went and talked to the head security guard and told them what happened, and it's not their protocol, and he looked in the system and found over 30 pictures of me. He reported it to the higher-ups. I had to go in and speak to a group of 3 in admin and let them know what happened, and found out Harry was fired for acting weird with other girls. It might not be the most crazy story here, but I hate the thought of being with him there alone, and that I was almost oblivious to how bad the situation actually was. I'm originally from Portland, OR, and got a great opportunity to take a scholarship at a school in Washington DC. My family doesn't have money, and to ship my car and fly out all of my stuff would cost several thousands of dollars. Plus, I was so afraid that the airline would break my cello, and so on, that I wasn't willing to take the risk. I decided to pack my 1991 Toyota full of my stuff and hit the road. I mapped it out that it would take 4 days if I hustled, costing around $500 worth of gas. Eating off the dollar menu and sleeping in my car, good stuff. Fast forward 1 whole day, and I'm like, screw this. I was at a pace of 16 hours a day driving, just starting my 2nd day. There was nowhere good to sleep in my car out in the middle of nowhere that runs around the I-90. The only marginally okay place I found was a parking lot of a small hospital somewhere in Missoula, MT I think. It felt so sketchy sleeping in my car. I can't put my finger on exactly what made me feel that kind of way, but the further I got from Oregon, the more I felt like I drew attention and people. I was running off adrenaline, covering 800 miles a day, calling my parents at every rest stop, and leaving voicemails on the machine letting them know where I was. I was physically and emotionally exhausted, and I was so ready to just be at my dorm to sleep. My car wasn't super old, but it was a flood salvage and not that reliable. I had to random engine lights on permanently, and I was so afraid I was going to break down and be stranded out in the middle of nowhere. If you've never made this trip, at least at this point in time, you need to pack cans of gas in your trunk, because if you run out of gas, you'll be miles away from the nearest petrol station. I remember driving all day through nothingness with nothing but tumbleweeds, sleeping on the side of the road, waking up and not seeing civilization again for a total of 12 hours of driving. Now fast forward to Wyoming. I don't remember where, but I was near South Dakota / Nebraska. I was running low on cash due to a rock hitting my side mirror, breaking the glass, and I needed to buckle down to have enough for gas. I saw a sign at some tiny church saying free community spaghetti dinner. Sounds alright. This did as that evening, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. It was only a few hours from before it started too. But I figured I could stop by and introduce myself, help set up, and enjoy that sweet spaghetti. Long story short, it was great. I met some really nice folks and ate some really good spaghetti. Everyone seemed amazing. The pastor ended up asking me if I needed to sleep there for the night. A lady chimes in that they would be absolutely fine to find me somewhere. A third person claimed that they had some cots down in the preschool in the basement I could use. Heck yeah. So the time rolls around, we finish clearing up, everyone leaves the church. I get shown to my cot, and inherent creepiness of sleeping in a cot in a dark preschool aisle. No red flags at all now. That cot was absolutely magic compared to the van. I put a few of them together and made a nest out of pillows and was able to lay out comfortably. But I did wake up hearing footsteps, however. It seemed like they were just kind of wandering around. I sat frozen, holding my breath. Oh wait, Then it hit me. I forgot to call my dad to tell him where I was. Sleeping in the basement of a church in a cot. I don't even know the name of and know exactly where I am. Even any nearby towns. I decided to try and get out of there. I quietly put my shoes on and tried to tiptoe opposite where I thought I could hear someone. I felt such anxiety in the dark. I can hear them behind me still. I knew there's probably an emergency exit at the end of the hallway, so I decided to start running. As I do, someone screams out, "Hey!" and they grab the back of my shirt. I felt their cold hand exposed to my skin. They ripped the spaghetti strap in some weird move. I'm still moving and not sure how I managed it, but I slid out of the bottom and quickly kept on running. It was too dark to see them or know who they were. I didn't turn around or look back. I kept on running up the hill in the darkness. I lost one of my shoes as I cut my foot on something in the grass but didn't care. I kept running with only one shoe until I got to my car, then burnt rubber out of there. I drove until the gas light came on and didn't even go to refill the tank until that was on. I still have no idea who that person was to this day. So this happened in 2013 when I was 17. My family was looking at this house and the owner showed up and talked with my parents. Seemed like a nicer old man. Built the house himself. It's a pretty nice 2-story house overlooking a river. Anyway, I was standing back watching everyone talk as the owner is talking and laughing. When there's a break in the conversation, he turns away from my parents and his expression completely and instantly changes from happy to the most sinister look that I've probably ever seen. I don't think he notices me watching. It probably appeared as I was on my phone with my head down, but as soon as he turned his back, he instantly went back to smiling. It was so creepy that it made me feel physically sick. I told my mum and said how weird it was, but she said he's probably just awkward. So we got the house and moved in, and the next weekend my family's going to church, but I don't feel like going, so they all leave me at home. So it's Sunday morning at about 11 AM when I hear really loud banging outside. It's rhythmic and coming from the side of the home. I was on the other side of the house on the 2nd floor. Honestly, I thought maybe it is the wind. But it stopped after about 5 minutes. 10 minutes later I hear walking around downstairs. Chairs moving, kitchen cabinets opening and the fridge opening. I immediately and quietly go to my door, lock it, grab a baseball bat. I call 911, which is a really good idea. I tell them my address and text my mum and tell her that someone's in the house and that I've called the police. At this point, the 911 operator said someone will be out there in 10 minutes. I tell her shush because I hear footsteps walking towards the stairs. Basically, the house is so thin, I could track where he was in the home. At this time, my mum says she's on her way. She's 30 minutes away. So here is a 17-year-old, 5'1", 100-pound girl hunkered in her room, full well knowing that if he come in, he'd overpower me and take the bat. I'm terrified now. I heard him walk down the doorway towards my door. I saw the handle turn but stop. It's locked. And I heard him stand there. He didn't move. I can hear his breath. It felt like forever, but really I think it is about 10 seconds. I heard him turn and go back down. I heard the back door open and shut. About 3 minutes later the cops arrived. The 911 operator asked me if I could let them in or if they need to do it by force. I knew I had no one in with me, so I let them in. No one was there now. No sign of forced entry, nothing. When my mum got there, she looked to my stepdad and asked if he'd changed the locks, which he hadn't. I think the creepiest part, however, and what really validated my story, was that there are shoe prints that are larger than anyone's in our home, and the police hadn't been there yet. They just stopped outside my room. I've only told this to a few people outside of my family and recently began sharing it. I wish I'd told someone sooner, as I discovered a co-worker encountered these men also. I work downtown, 8 to 5 hours. Once in a while I do overtime, but not often. And not to this day had this happened before. It was just a couple of minutes after 5 PM when I left work, just a few blocks from my office, building to the train station. There are a few bars and back alleys along the walk, but the worst I've dealt with among there are homeless folks who get a bit aggressive wanting cash. They never bother me. The train ride from the station downtown is where I park my car, about 40 minutes away if I'm lucky. I managed to get a seat and don't have to stand for the whole ride, luckily. On that day, I was lucky more or less getting a window seat, which left the seat next to me open. At the next stop, 3 men get on. One sat next to me, the other sat across from me facing me. I'm listening to music on my iPod, so I can't really hear them. I did notice though, however, that the guy sitting next to me was trying to get closer to me on the seat. He would occasionally do this thing where he'd get close enough that his leg was touching mine. I'd scoot away, but he'd come closer. Eventually, I passed right against the window and I had no doubt that he'd move even closer to me again. I was wearing sunglasses and could every so often glance at them. I'd noticed that they would occasionally say something and then all look at me, which is incredibly creepy and uncomfortable. I was getting close to my stop, but nervous about getting off. But mine is second to last on the train line, so when the train pulled into my station, I got off. The guy next to me tries to grab my arm, but I'm moving quick so I can get out. I was hoping they would get off the train at a different stop. It was a busy station, and they couldn't have known where I parked to, but they did. I guess it was their luck they targeted me. I park in the furthest lot from the station because the parking is free. It's about a 7-minute walk, which isn't usually too bad, but my lot tends to be pretty quiet and I was really worried about them following me. As a bit of background, I was overweight, worked in an office, so sitting down all day and not being able to work out. I was about 30 pounds overweight and couldn't run more than 30 seconds. Sad considering I ran track and played hockey before. I still play hockey, but on a women's daytime league it's not competitive. I'm the youngest on my team by 20 years, but my mum's on the team and it's still fun together. So anyway, I was crossing the bridge over the road from the station to the parking lot when I noticed 3 guys less than 10 feet behind me. I wasn't carrying a knife, though I do own a legal size knife. I didn't have pepper spray either because it's illegal in my Canadian city. I know a little bit about personal protection though, so I put my car key and house key in my fingers so if I hit someone it's gonna hurt more. The guys followed me then across the main lot. They didn't hide the fact that they're there, and the more nervous I was getting, the more I heard laughter. I managed to get across the road between the lots before they do. They had to wait a couple of cars before they can cross. I was almost halfway across the lot when they crossed the road. I start running. I could hear their feet pounding on the pavement behind me. I use my clicker to open my car when I get close. I then watch the door open, so glad that there was no one parked next to me. I'd barely closed my door and slammed the lock when the guys reached my car, banging on my windows and yelling, jeering. I've never been so afraid in my life. I'm very worried that they're gonna break the window to get in. Now there's a spot where I can see the guy banging on the back window of my hatchback, so I couldn't reverse out on my spot without running him over, which I should have, but I was afraid and not thinking. I was screaming, but there was no one around me. I don't know what they wanted, but I knew for one thing it wasn't good. I wish I'd screamed, or done something. I wish I had a screamer, but I realised I had something better. When you're being assaulted, you're not supposed to scream for help because no one wants to help. You're meant to scream fire because everyone wants to watch a blaze. So I turned on my alarm in my car. It was so incredibly loud that I thought I was gonna go deaf, but it had the reaction I wanted. The guys started backing off. I saw people walk into the lot in the direction of my car and saw what was going on. The guys back off towards the train station and start running, and I drive home as quick as I can. The next night I started working out, and I've worked out ever since then. If those cars hadn't been in the road at the same time as me, or if I'd run a bit slower, God knows what would have happened. For 6 months last year, I lived in the north of Spain. About a week before I was gonna move back to Ireland, my friend and I were at my house having dinner, drinking a latte. I was renting an apartment in the city, and my roommate was an older lady, maybe in her 50s. I'm 21. That night, my roommate left to go and have dinner with her friends. About a minute after she left, someone buzzed for the door to be open. I look at the camera and didn't recognize the woman. She looks to be in her late 20s and early 30s, so I just assumed it's one of her roommate's friends. And she's coming to meet her or something like that. Now, I'm not thinking much of it and buzz her into the building where they can meet in the lobby. At first I didn't buzz her in because I didn't recognize her. She walked away from the door, but then I hit the buzzer as soon as she walked in. I myself walked away from the camera, meaning I couldn't see if she actually entered or not, assuming that if she did enter, she would just call or text my roommate. Boy, was I wrong. This woman came up to my apartment building on the 6th floor. She come up 2 minutes after my roommate left, so I didn't know where she was at this point. Now, the two must have seen each other when my roommate got off the lift and the lady got in. Realizing that this is weird, I do not open the door when she rings it. I look through the peephole just to confirm that it wasn't anyone I knew. At this point, I back away from the door and gesture to my friend to be silent. We creep back to my room, which is on the far side of the apartment, and I begin calling my roommate, who isn't picking up. Meanwhile, the lady is constantly ringing at my doorbell. My roommate is not picking up. My friend is just telling me open my door. In her mind, it's a woman, so she must be harmless, but I tell her she's an idiot for underestimating the female sex. Women can be criminal too. She keeps telling me to open the door, but I refuse. The door keeps ringing, and I look through the peephole. At this point, I understand that if she knew my roommate or was looking for someone specific, she would just call or text them. She didn't take out the phone at all. She just stayed eerily silent, didn't call out any names or ask if anyone was home. That's weird to me. I finally get through to my roommate. She says she wasn't expecting anyone and that she doesn't know anyone in that age range. She asks if I'm okay and I say I'm fine. Now it's been at least 20 minutes. I know the lady knows someone is home because the lights are on, and to my understanding that's why she's not leaving. I continue watching her through the peephole. I see her go into the lift for a minute and then come out again. The lift's really loud and it's not moved. She just went in and come back. In my mind it shows someone's waiting in the lift for her. After about 40 minutes she leaves. I ran back into our hall and flicked on the outside camera. The lady left the building with 2 men. They all had backpacks on and black gear. I will be internally grateful for trusting my instincts this day and not my friends. It's better to be safe than sorry.